Today on The Big Story, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam invokes emergency powers to ban masks at protests. Southeast Asia's internet economy soars past $138 billion. And hip hawkers putting their spin on traditional hawker favourites. Good evening and welcome to The Big Story. My name is Alyssa Wu and I'm coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. In a bid to quell escalating violence, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has invoked emergency powers, the first time in more than 50 years, to ban face masks. This was announced at a press conference a few hours ago.
As the current situation has clearly given rise to a state of serious public danger, the Chief Executive in Council decided at a special meeting this morning to invoke the power under the Emergency Regulations Ordinance and make a new regulation in the name of Prohibition on Face Covering Regulation, which is essentially an anti-mask law. It is essential for us to stop violence and restore calmness in society as soon as possible. We hope that the new legislation can help us to achieve this objective. This regulation targets rioters or those resort to violence. That's why the regulation contains defense and exemptions to cater for legitimate needs to wear a mask, and we believe that by so doing, we have struck the necessary balance.
So that was Carrie Lam. The ban on face masks will take effect at midnight on October 5th. Under emergency laws, authorities are allowed to make any regulations whatsoever in the public interest. To talk to us about this and the possible repercussions of the ban, we have Hong Kong correspondent Claire Huang on the line. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Ali.
To clarify, the ban on face masks is only for those who use it to hide their identity. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So you have got, people like journalists or, who have to cover the protest, or people with legitimate reasons to wear face masks, for example, students or people who are sick and, they have conditions, so those are all exempted.
I understand. And for the face mask ban, what are the pros and cons of this decision?
Right from the start of the escalated protests in June, you have protesters who wore face masks. They still do, basically to hide their identities under the masks. So those who are not frontline or hardcore protesters typically have no issues under this, new law, I guess, to come into effect. You can call this a divide and conquer strategy. So basically now you will have the ones who are not radical to decide for themselves, to take a stand. And one possible outcome is that the turnout will shrink, which is exactly what the government wants. This allows the police officers to identify the radical ones and to go after the radical protesters easily. So the problem with this decision is that, some people in the community say that this is a reflection that Hong Kong is now a state. And of course, the pan-democratic parties, lawmakers, have also asked whether this could prompt greater violence in the immediate, hours or days to come. And it's hard to enforce, in some sense, if everyone continues to take to the streets in the masks.
Now, I understand the press conference only happened a few hours ago, but what is the sentiment on the ground? Have you heard of anything yet?
So just ahead of the announcement that started at about 3 p.m., thousands, in office wear and with face masks gathered ahead of the announcement in Central to oppose the new law. So many of them were wearing surgical masks. They took to the streets on Central, and they chanted slogans, and they continued to ask for the 5 demands. On top of this, further protests have been planned for tonight. And including a march. It's a cheeky thing, right? And a march to ask people to wear Halloween masks and to sing in, 18 districts, in the malls in 18 districts. So we can expect them to probably wear masks
So what possible emergency measures do you think Hong Kong might enact?
Well, Ellie, Assistant Professor Eric Cheong of the University of Hong Kong, I spoke to him right today, and he said that the problem with this problem with the move is that it sets very dangerous precedents because it passes all normal legislative process. So you don't have consultation, you don't have debate, there's no voting in council. And he said that this is worrying because it's also a very wide-ranging power is given to the chief executive in council, and this would include forfeiting one's property, imposing immigration controls, or imposing foreign exchange controls. But the Secretary for Finance, Paul Chan, has said earlier that they will not be imposing foreign exchange control.
Now, Claire, I have just one more question for you. Does the decision to invoke emergency powers show that the Hong Kong government is running out of options to control the situation?
Actually, not quite true. They have been using a kid's glove on protesters. If they want to, they can, enact a lot more laws, and they have other tools in their toolbox, so to speak. Okay, for example, Hong Kong is part of China. So what can they do? They can seek help from China, right? So far they have refrained from deploying lethal weapons until over the weekend, right? Where the 18-year-old was shot. But they have basically, if you compare to other countries, like in the West, they would have used the guns, very early on in the entire protest. So. The government can deploy more lethal weapons. They can ask for help, and I think under the regulations, like Mrs. Lam has shown today, they still have some tools in their toolbox.
Thank you so much, Claire, for the answers. So that was Claire, our Hong Kong correspondent. Please stay tuned to our website for the latest news on the Hong Kong protests. Now, if you have shopped online recently, got on a Grab or Gojek ride, or watched a video streamed online, you would have contributed to the region's booming internet economy. In fact, Southeast Asia's internet economy is worth more than $138 billion, largely fueled by e-commerce and the ride-hailing demand. This is more than triple in size over the past 4 years. Continuing at this rate, it will be on track to hit US $300 billion by 2025. This is according to a report from Google, Temasek Holdings, and consulting firm Bain & Company. To talk more about this, I have tech correspondent Wai with me. Hi, Wai.
Hey, Alyssa.
So can you explain the reasons behind this explosive growth?
Right. So I think the main reason is because so many of Southeast Asians are now connected to the internet. And a lot of them are connected to the internet through their mobile phones. So just a decade ago, 80% of Southeast Asians didn't even have internet connectivity. But now, the internet user base has exploded to 360 million users. So, the more time we spend on the internet, the more likely we are going to be perhaps spending money on the internet. And apparently, Southeast Asians love spending time on their mobile internet so much that a lot of the countries here are among the top in the world. So Thailand is right now #1. Apparently, the Thais spend the most amount of hours per day online, which is more than 5 hours a day. So that's pretty amazing.
How about, and obviously that translates into money, correct? Because they are buying a lot of things online.
Yes. So they're using the internet beyond social media and beyond messaging services. And they're doing things like hailing a car ride or ordering food online and buying daily necessities. So not just big ticket items, but groceries as well.
Now this report looks at 5 internet economy sectors. So there's e-commerce, we also mentioned ride hailing, online travel, online media, and also digital financial services.
Yep.
Now let's talk about e-commerce and ride hailing. What's the growth like for these sectors in the region and in Singapore?
Okay, so for across Southeast Asia, e-commerce is definitely #1. It's largest and fastest growing sector, and it's now worth $38 billion US, which is pretty amazing. And it's again, like I said, it's because people are not just buying furniture items or big electronic items. It's people who want to spend money just on a daily basis online and buying things like your milk or bread and just getting it delivered. And ride hailing, meanwhile, which in this report includes food delivery services, has grown to 12.7 billion US dollars because when the weather gets hazy outside or it's humid, it's just easier for us and more convenient to order food through ride-hailing services. And so in Singapore, it's worth 3 billion US dollars, which is a lot of bubble teas and chicken rice.
I think that's one of the more popular items, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mai.
Thank you.
Now, TGIF, it's Friday and there's the weekend to look forward to. If you're an adventurous foodie looking for unusual dishes, besides Michelin-starred restaurants, you can head to the Hawker Centre. That's where you'll find hip hawkers who have put their own spin on familiar dishes, such as carrot cake with bacon, mac and cheese, and prawn mee. To tell us more about it, I have food correspondent Eunice with me. Hi, Eunice.
Hello.
Now, these hawkers, they must be doing something right to make it to your lists. So can you tell me how did they get on your radar?
Well, in this case, you could say the stars aligned because what happened was the owners from Shaker Lakers, one of the stores, had reached out to me first. I also had my eye on this brand called Mama's Boy Bakes because I saw that they had opened their brick and mortar store, and I had heard of their home business prior to the opening of this store. So these were on my radar, and then we thought like, hey, why not look out for more to do a story? And then the good thing is that a lot of them are very social media savvy, so it wasn't that difficult to kind of pull together a few others, that kind of opened within this year or so. For the story. And the most important thing was that it was to look also for an interesting angle, and the one that I thought was the most interesting was that they were actually putting their own spin on like classic dishes. So that's why you mentioned like the bacon, carrot cake, things like that.
There is one that sounds and looks very ordinary, the prawn mee. It looks like any other prawn mee. So why and how did that make it to your list?
Yeah, so that actually looks very traditional, but what's interesting about that is that the prawn and pork soup base, like any other prawn noodle outlet out there, what's different is that it has a fancy French technique of adding what they call a mirepoix, which is actually diced carrot, celery, and onions. So this adds to the soup's sweetness, and it is a reflection of the owner's culinary training. They are actually graduates from the Culinary Institute of America in Singapore.
Okay, so it looks ordinary, but it should probably taste out of this world.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, Eunice, you've been covering the Singapore F&B scene for about 10 years now, or maybe a bit more?
Yeah.
Right. So what would you like to see more of?
Well, I like to see more of such hawkers, shake up the scene, add a dose of, just a bit more flavor, a bit more excitement to our hawker culture. And also at the same time continue, whether it's being traditional or whether it is, doing funky stuff, to do something interesting. One of the hawkers, Mr. Gladwin Yap of Prawn and Me, the prawn noodle place, talked about hawker food being too cheap and that it would be good to kind of close the gap between the price of food versus the income that we get in Singapore, because we have quite a great disparity, he pointed out. So, whether it's whether young or old, first-time hawkers or the veterans, I really think that we really need to see more support, whether it's from, say, government agencies to help with, say, subsidies or, helping out with any way financially, as well as just the general public, when I was talking to all these hawkers, a lot of people coming by were like, giving them a friendly smile, a thumbs up, even telling us that like, it's great that you're featuring them because they do really good food, and that is something that, the encouragement that these hawkers really need to continue, and to also maybe encourage more to join the industry as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eunice. Now you can read up more about these hip hawkers and their unusual offerings in Eunice's story on straitstimes.com. Now those were our top stories for the day. For more news and videos, do head on to our website. Once again, I'm Alyssa, and thank you for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the big story on Monday.